Assorted Traveling Companions, Chapter 2, First Part. "You need to tell me what the cargo was," said Dee. "That again. I'll say no more about it. You'll have to be content with my daughter's secret." Something glittered and zipped in front of the director's eyes. He shut his arrogant mouth. All the old man's achievements as a scholar, his fairly good points as a person, and even his position in the capital burned away like mist before that pale blade. Not that the man hadn't been through tough situations before. Excavations always involved problems with landowners and villagers, and the thugs they hired could be set off with a single boast, so he'd actually engaged in gunfights with pistol in hand. He also considered himself to have a good deal of nerve. But now all of that bravado came crashing down, just like the glory of the nobility. The blade in the old man's field of view wasn't the same sort of weapon that he'd wielded in those battles. Even Lilia, his professed ally, couldn't so much as move a muscle. "Answer me," Dee said. Marquis didn't think he'd be able to reply. His fear was so great, it choked his throat. Yet from it issued the words, "A coffin." And they came the instant he heard Dee's voice. "A coffin?" Dee asked, taking a step forward. Though he could no longer see the blade, the director moved too. The unlikely pair crossed the barroom and stepped out onto the planks of the wooden sidewalk. Walking down to the end of the building, they turned to the left. Just before the hunter did so, he said, "Stay out of this." That one icy remark made Lilia, who'd finally started after him, halt in her tracks. "Don't be such a spoilsport, Dee." There was something coquettish about her tone. "The fact is, I'm pretty curious about the cargo myself. You might have been called to this village, but I came here after hearing rumors about what that plane was carrying. See, this is the only route up the mountain." "What sort of rumors?" "Let me join up and I'll tell you." "If they've hired you, we'll find out sooner or later, I reckon." The sudden hoarseness of Dee's voice made Lilia's eyes widen. They shifted strangely to Dee's left hand. You can talk out of your left hand."
"So the jig is up."
"You make that voice on purpose. I think you need a third party's opinion on the matter. It's crude, and it sounds like some country bumpkin. Just the worst." "My sentiments exactly," said Dee.
"Excuse me,"
said the hoarse voice, but since both came from Dee, Lilia's eyes bugged again. "The mayor and the director of whatever it was, you'll see what the cargo is as soon as you reach the aircraft," said the woman. "That's kind of obvious, isn't it? But I want to know now." "You'd be betraying your employer," Dee told her. "No problem. This clown's half unconscious. He won't even remember I was here." Suddenly the girl tore open the right side of her combat vest.
"My goodness,"
The hoarse voice remarked with admiration at the full breast that glistened in the moonlight. "But if he does remember anything, this'll throw him off track." "Whose coffin is it?" Dee asked. He sounded as if he'd completely forgotten Lilia was there. "Duke Gilson's." The director's reply drew a gasp. Lilia's eyes were drawn to Dee's left hand. From it, a groan of a voice had croaked Duke Gilson's name.
"This is too dangerous. What do you say to passing on this one? Did I hear you right, mister? What you say and what you do are completely at odds."
This time there was no reply, as if there'd been no place for Lilia here from the very start. Dee and Director Marquis continued talking. The coffin was unearthed from ancient ruins about 200 miles north of this village. It was made of stone, and devoid of any noble title, name, or any other description. That in itself was rare. But then all the defenses around the coffin completely defied common sense. As if even the memory itself were a curse, Marquis shuddered 3 times, but Dee's blade would brook no silence from him. The director continued. There was no trace of any of the defense's nobles set about their coffins. Not only that, but it even had a heavy chain wound 5 times around it, as if to guard against anyone getting out. That's all well and good, though no similar cases have been unearthed. If the chains were put there by humans, the reason for their actions is understandable. However, the following had been carved into the coffin's lid with some sort of blade. The Demon Duke Gilson, buried in the grave he truly deserves in the manner he has earned by Grand Duke Brubeck and his brave compatriots. This noble was sealed away by other nobles. That, too, has precedent. Relations weren't necessarily cordial between all nobles. However, the one ironclad rule among the nobility was broken by those who buried him. No matter how loathsome their sworn enemy might be, nobles always interred fellow nobility in a fitting grave. But the grave we found Duke Gilson in was a wretched little grave marked with a bare stone. What's more, it was buried 10,000 feet beneath one corner of a vast and sprawling ruin. At that point, the hoarse voice sounded just like Dee's. You knew about that, the director said, staring at Dee in amazement. A few seconds passed, and then the hoarse voice said, "A coarse stone grave that couldn't be described as noble, set deep in the earth. Actually, just as was carved into the coffin, that dead language, it probably was the only fitting grave for the coffin's occupant. A noble so abhorred by his fellow nobility. Now I finally see. I know why that shudder passed through you, Dee. The devil Gilson. The person in that coffin was feared by all the nobility." Dee pulled back his sword. Or that's how it appeared to the director. Astonished, he blinked his eyes. There'd been no blade there at all. It had been returned to its sheath by the time they'd left the bar. The only reason he'd continued to perceive a sword pointed at his eye was because of the weird killing lust he sensed from Dee. The aged director still hadn't completely roused from its effects when a voice like a cold, still winter's night filled his ears, saying, "I'll take the job." While another, hoarse one seemed to curse, "No, don't!" or words to that effect. The aged director's brain was confused as to what to do until Lilia's voice returned him to reason, saying, "Then it's decided, Mr. Director." "That it is. We're counting on you, Dee. Your job's to locate the coffin and bring it back down safely." "And what if the occupant has awakened?" "You must take him alive." "You get no promise of that, where Duke Gilson is concerned." If he were to bring up the matter of his daughter Vera, he knew that would be effective, and yet he couldn't do it. The old man nodded. "Understood. In that case, I shall leave it to your best judgment. Nevertheless, I want you to make the utmost effort to bring his body back down here." "I can't do that either." "Why not?" "The effect bringing Gilson down here would have been clear enough. But I can't allow that. The only noble cursed by the nobility must be destroyed in obscurity." These must have been Dee's words. Could it be that Dee feared the man called Gilson? Before the aged director, the hem of the hunter's coat flared out. There's some gear I need you to get. Come with me. The three of them walked off. Straight ahead lay their destination, which wasn't the most fitting place in the world for a hunter. A general store. Page break. Leaving the director to settle the bill, Dee went to the hotel and got a room. Lilia left, indignant, going off in pursuit of the director. Now that Dee had taken the job, she'd been told that her services were no longer needed. By this point, she was undoubtedly embroiled in relentless, passionate negotiations in some room in the town hall.
A snow-covered mountain? That's the worst environment for you. And up against Duke Gilson, of all people. Let's pass on this one.
His left hand had practically been foaming at the mouth ever since he'd stepped into the room, but Dee replied, "I can't do that." His tone was tranquil as always, yet carried a strength. It could probably be called determination. This job is in my blood. I can't run or hide from it.
The one who put it there took it upon himself to do so. You don't have to take responsibility for this.
If I don't, who will? The left hand fell silent. The offer came just as I was about to head into the northern frontier. They wanted someone to rescue the crew and cargo of an aircraft that had crashed in the snowy mountains. If there were no survivors, they asked that I bring back the cargo alone. True, Dhampirs are impervious to the cold, but even given that, it wasn't the sort of job I should take.
You mean to say the devil made you do it?
The cargo was Gilson's coffin. It's safe to say his will might have put us in motion.
You seem pretty calm about that. And there's nothing you hate more than being made to act on someone else's wishes.
If Gilson rises again, what will become of the world? Dee opened his left hand. Ripples spread across the surface of his palm, and a human face appeared. Covered with wrinkles that could be those of the very young or the very old. Nevertheless, it had eyes swimming with vitality as it gave him a wry grin.
Ruin,
it said. He knew that full well, both at the time and in the future. And that's why he entrusted me with this.
Hey, Murder Outside Time? Sounds like the name of a cheesy movie.
Just as the left hand was grimacing, there was a knock at the door.
That female hunter back so soon.
Turning toward the door, Dee asked, "Who is it?" Though his voice was low, the person outside could hear it clearly. "Cray is the name. I'm a traveling man. I'm here with a request for you." "It's open." Just as Dee responded, a lanky fellow slipped in like a breeze. Though his traveler's coat and thermal trousers were threadbare in spots, his face was intrepid. It would be safe to say his expression was that of a daring man. The faint scar on his left cheek only served to heighten the intensity of the eyes that reflected Dee. "You'd be Mr. D, I take it? I'm Cray."
Cray Jensen, a.k.a. Cray of the Dead Man's Blade.
For a second, the intrepid expression turned to one of shock that peered at the source of that hoarse voice. First part, and